So we already know Martha. Sir, why don't we start with you? Introduce yourself and how you were involved.
I'm Lurch. He tried to get money out of me and didn't get it.
And you?
Hi, my name is Beck Pitsis and I'm the producer.
Hi, I'm Chris McNabb. I was one of the editors of the film.
Dr. Paul Salzberg, one of the people who got ripped off.
Cecilia Kawachi and I had the file whacking Narrowsburg.
I'm Tom Kawachi, her husband.
I'm Zach. I was in both movies.
Brian Benson, my star is still rising.
I'm John Conway. I was on as the historian, but I had a whole other chapter of the Richie Castellano story that wasn't told. So I'm sure most of you did.
Well, that's it. You know how to set up some intrigue, sir. And then starting here and going this way.
I always wanted to be in the movies. I'm Judge Frank Labuda.
I'm Dan, I'm the co-producer, and I played a big role in getting Marie captured and deported.
I'm Ralph Hebner. I was a town judge that took him out of circulation and sent him to Judge Buddha.
Awesome. Thank you all for participating. We want to be clear, after we're done with the Q&A, several newspapers would like a photo of everyone together, so if you'll stick around for that as soon as this is done. And raise your hand if you have a question that you would like answered, please. We are recording the session, so if you wait for the microphone, that would be great.
Did any of you actually get your money back? Any of the investors?
Did anyone get any of the money back, sir?
No, not a penny. I had given considerable amount. I really wasn't an investor. I was trying to help out the film festival and also the hospital in Calico. Castellano was instrumental in trying to help the hospital. So that's how they got me into it. And I lent them money, and then what happened was, he gave me a check. He said, "This is from Jocelyn, she's good, you know, she won't do anything bad." And it was like a good cop, bad cop. He was the bad guy, and I didn't trust him. I said, "Well, Jocelyn, she seemed okay." And they gave me a large check. They said, "Cash it, when you can." And then when I went to cash it, the check bounced. I thought about it for a while. She sent me a nice letter about 2 weeks after it happened. "Don't worry, we'll take care of it. Please don't do anything. You'll go to jail." So I didn't do anything. I got nothing back, no.
Anyone else, anything to add?
We did get our money back. I think that maybe I feel bad saying this, but I might be the only one on the stage who got the money back. But we did but it was just because she was in jail, and it was part of her plea deal. So she was going to stay in jail indefinitely unless she paid the restitution to a few of us, and she did, and then was deported. But yeah, I don't think anyone else did, right?
Any other questions? Anyone else think of a question? Please raise your hand if you've got one.
I want to hear the other chapter of the story, and I think I know, a little bit about it, but the hospital, does it have to do with the hospital, or is there even more? Like, it seems like there's so much going on here.
No, nothing to do with the hospital. But a lot of those scenes you saw in the documentary of the scene with Pat Cooper and a lot of the scenes of the celebrating, I was one of the owners of the Eddy Farm Resort in Sparrowbush during that time, and we had the banquet there for the first, after the first film festival, and they also came and spent about 3 or 4 weeks at our hotel filming much of Four Deadly Reasons. A lot of, if you see the movie later, a lot of the scenes were shot at our hotel. They ran up a pretty substantial bill.
Yep.
And like Dr. Salzberg, Richie gave me a check, and the check bounced. And then he said, "Well, I wasn't aware that Jocelyn had closed the account. I wrote it on the wrong account. So, I'll pay you off as, over a period of time. And he called me up to come to Narrowsburg one day, and he said, I have 5 big for you, come up. And I drove up here, and he gave me an envelope. Very, very mob-like scene where he had me come into his office, and he had a guy stand right behind me. And he said, I'll give you the rest. Here's a big chunk of it. I'll give you the rest in a couple of weeks. And I just kind of hurried out, got in the car. I said to my wife, just drive. And I looked in the envelope, and it was $500 in there. I was expecting $5,000. That's when I really kind of realized what was going on. So, but that was the thing, that they made that movie. They were supposed to be at the hotel for a couple of days filming, and it turned into 3 or 4 weeks, and the bill just kept getting bigger and bigger. And I could see that there were problems developing. Some of the things that Larry Ravine talked about, Paul Borghese, in the documentary, we could see those things happening day by day. And unfortunately, we were a victim of a lot of it.
Next question.
Yeah, I would like to know how the New York State Police got involved in the bridge scene.
Anyone know that story?
No, my father was not there in it. I didn't, the trooper that was in it, I forgot what his name was. But I know him, but it wasn't my father.
All I remember is there was 2 shoots. There was the first shoot, which was like the gym scene and some of that bigger stuff. And then there was actually like 6 months to a year that went by, and then the rest of the film was shot at Eddy Farm and surrounding. And that bridge scene was shot the first time around.
I have a question for you. What have you gone on to do since your ambitions changed?
Well, I became an editor because I watched 4 Deadly Reasons, and I was like, wow, I think I might be able to do better than this. But you should all go across the street and see it. It is it is something to see. But I've gone on to do a lot of documentaries and true crime podcasts. I won 2 Emmys. Always nice to have a chance to say that.
So dreams still come true in Narrowsburg. That's wonderful.
I'm just curious about how he went about involving the hospital in all of this. That's very disturbing to hear.
Well, at that time, there was talk that they wanted to close down the Calico division of whatever it was called, Community General at that time. And we had big protests, we had candlelight ceremonies. We tried to keep the hospital open for the community. And one of the things, Richard said, I can help. I'll have fundraisers, we'll have a dance, we'll do this. And he actually did help to try to keep the hospital open. So I have to give him credit for that. And maybe the money I got ripped off of went to a good purpose.
No. Another question, anyone?
There was a couple of frames where they showed a picture of Jocelyn, and then it was said that she's using her same photo in the Queens Film Festival. And I noticed that that photo was from their website, the Narrowsburg International Independent Film Festival. And I was surprised to see today that that website, 20 years later, is still alive on the web, and you can see all what they charge people, $10,000 to be a sponsor, and their plans to start a rental car company and a travel agency, and Jocelyn was also going to develop a film studio in Sullivan County. Do you know who pays for that website to be up? It's very interesting.
It is very interesting. Are you the person who pays? I mean, because I've been asking myself the same question for years. Yeah, it's incredible that the site is still up, and it's one of the most hilarious sites. It really is like a time warp to look at that.
There is actually, there was an unsubstantiated story that we heard at one point from I forget who it was who told us this, but the story was that the person who had set up that website had never gotten paid either. And so they actually kept it up once Richie was in jail because it was evidence of who they were. And that was never substantiated. I forget who it was.
Yeah, I was hoping maybe the person is here tonight.
I remember us trying to track down and figure it out, and we were never able to actually find it. But that was the story that we heard. And I mean, I don't know what other reason there would be that it would still be up. They're definitely not paying for it.
The internet is forever. We have a question over there.
I was curious, is it difficult or expensive to get clearance for all the film clips from other movies like Music Man and Analyze This and Frankenstein? Is that a big undertaking?
We had a very good lawyer, and so basically you just have to find someone who's going to ride with the film and fair use all of the clips, and those that we weren't able to make a fair use argument around, we had to just let go. So there were so many more clips that we wanted to include in the film and so much more within these clips that we wanted to include, but unfortunately we only got the ones you saw in the film.
That last clip of the Music Man when he rounds the corner looks like it could be Main Street in Narrowsburg, though, doesn't it?
Well,
other questions?
Is Jocelyn still alive? And the child that Richard and, was that their child? Their son? Was that their kid together or was that his son?
that was his son, yeah, and his son has. It was very funny when we filmed his son. He was sort of like a party boy, like party promoter living on Staten Island, and now he is a Staten Island Republican politician. So, you know, a lot changes in 10 years. And then, where you said, where is she now?
She's still alive.
Is she still alive? Well, the funny thing, so I had been in touch with her about a year ago, and you know, we emailed back and forth, and then of course I was like, well, I'm going to tell her that the movie's finished, and she's not allowed back in the country, but maybe she'll want to know about it. And so I wrote to her, and I wrote to the 2 email addresses I had, and both of them bounced back, like they're no longer in use. And then I also called the phone number I had for her, which was a French number, nothing. So I think so, but I think she's completely changed her life. And it was funny, like one of the things that I found to confirm that she was actually in Madagascar was that she was doing these fundraisers for orphanages. And so that had always been, sometimes it was real and it seems like they actually helped the hospital here in some ways, and sometimes it was just a total fraud and the people who were supposed to get the money never got the money. That happened with a bunch of screenings at the Queens Film Festival. So I just was like, she's still at it. She had not given up.
This question is for the judge. After watching the movie, it's obvious that Richie probably was not really a good guy, but at what point did their actions become criminal? Because plenty of people go into all sorts of ventures, especially the arts, and they raise money, and it doesn't really work out, and plenty of investors lose money in all different areas. But at what point was it shown or proven that a crime was committed?
Thank you, Glenn, for that question. And that's a very good question, because many of us get involved in situations and dreams. And when does the dream go sour, and when does the dream become an act of criminality? In this case, we believe that Castellano did not come here with the intent to commit a crime. I think he intended to help the hospital, he intended to help the community, and he intended to help the arts, the film arts. But there came a point in time where greed overcame his dream. And when the checks bounced, when he took the money, substantial amounts of money from individuals, and did not use it for the purposes for which it was collected, and then the money disappeared, the checks bounced, and that became the criminality.
I wanted to know, there are so many scams nowadays, ongoing. But to sit here and watch this, I personally found it really very sad. I wanted to know how you feel watching this film about such a chunk of your life. How do you feel watching it? And does it bring a sadness to you? Does it, what the hell did I do? Or, how did I get involved in this? So I was just curious about that.
I personally, because I started the file, I'm just thankful we never invested. The smartest thing my husband said to Richie when he asked us to invest was, we have our money invested in survival. That was the smartest thing we did. We came out of this almost, to us it became almost a joke. I have copies of the movies at home. I have copies of the book that was written about it. You know I have the file. So for us it's like, this is just a part of Narrowsburg. Let's move on.
There's an old saying, if it's too good to be true, it's not true.
Well,
I was mostly involved in work with him with the civil cases, the lesser ones that didn't go over to county court. I had 23 cases against him of, where he screwed people out of their money by not paying them. He worked them, he had them in there, and he never paid them. So these people had been there, they had expenses, and they were never able to collect any money to do it. And that was these were the ones that I felt sorry for, the little guy.
well, I think in life, you win some and you lose some. I made a lot of money in my life and I've lost a lot of money in my life. I just chalked this up to life, and the film was very nostalgic. I have no bitterness to anyone, and that's about it.
He paid me for my firewood.
From my point of view, it's hard to replicate how excited the whole town was when I got there. And the fact that it was going to show at the end of the week made that week really exciting for this town. But of course, you know how it ended, and for some people it was incredibly sad, especially the guy that died not long after. Which isn't, you know, as an actor, you get very excited about a lot of things, and maybe we're sort of living in the age of the con right now, so which makes this kind of a good story for now with the president we have. And, but, you know, it's, to me, I've seen this happen also with projects of films that maybe not the whole town invests in, but you just see a lot of people losing their shirts over, you know, movies that can't really be made well. Because you really can't, very rarely can you make a movie for, you know, $500,000 that could work. So, but I was wondering, Martha, when you went to the funeral, the family of his, and how they felt about him and who was left.
Yeah, at Richie's funeral, you know, it was like a classic New York sort of, you know, there was New York Yankees, like flower arrangements everywhere, people weeping. It was very like, I looked at the scene and I thought like, Richie would have loved this. So yeah, unfortunately they wouldn't let me film, or you might have seen that up on stage. But yeah, in the end, like I'm sad that Richie isn't here tonight, because I actually think he would have loved to be here.
We have a question in the back of the room.
Hi, Martha. You touched a little bit on Richie's family. Can you tell us more? What neighborhood or neighborhoods did he grow up in? Where did he go to school? Did he have brothers and sisters? And did he get into trouble with the law at an early age?
Yeah, as far as I know, so Richie grew up in Gowanus, actually right near where we filmed his interview. and he has a cousin named Vincent who has written a lot about his childhood. You can find in his blog online. But yeah, he had like a really rough childhood, it seems like, and he told us a lot of stories about that, you know, like his dad being in jail and his mom being in a mental institution, and he was arrested, as far as I can tell, for robbing the shoe store in Park Slope, back when Park Slope was a rough neighborhood, and did a lot of time for that, and then went on to run a whole lot of other scams, including one where he pretended that he could get a guy out of jail by getting him into a drug treatment program, and he got this guy's family to pay him a lot of money. And anyway, he had a long, you know, he was a career criminal for sure, but also, of course, had that kind of charm to him you know, I think he had a rough life, so.
Can you imagine, I don't know if you noticed at the end of the film, but this was funded by Kickstarter. And you think about what would happen now if he had access to a tool like Kickstarter. And I think we'd have another 2008 financial crisis probably right there. And then we have time for one more question in the back of the room.
First,
Would that be me?
thank you. I want to thank all of you because I think you've had a lot of guts to get up there and admit to having been scammed. And many of us have been scammed in our lives in many different ways. But I really respect the fact that you've come forward, particularly, I disagree with the gentleman who said in the arts it's more likely. That's not true. We have somebody in the presidency and some other places in government who clearly understand the art of scamming. So I want to thank you tremendously for your being here and speaking out.
And this will be our last question.
Where were all the unions in this? What happened? Everybody saw what was happening and stopped work. Why didn't the unions do a cease and desist?
It wasn't a union film.
It was, yeah, it wasn't, I don't think it was a union film.
I don't think it was a union job.
Part of what got him in trouble was selling false union membership access. So I'm sure that the unions were talked about being involved, but probably were not. Is that fair? Yeah.
Yeah, that was the tipping point with the criminality, is when he was selling union ID cards, and they were fraudulent. They were just made up by him, and that totally tipped the scales towards the criminality. I just have one comment I'd like to say. When Martha first approached me about doing a film on one of the cases, and having been on the bench for 25 years with thousands of cases, when she mentioned Richard Castellano, I said, who? Because it didn't register. But then the more we talked about it, I remember the case, and there's some media here today, and to really show you the nature of the man, and I'm surprised Martha didn't put this in the film. At the very end of the journey in the courtroom, when he was going to be sentenced, he took the role from his lawyer, and he started to plead with me about reducing his state's prison sentence because I believe his son was getting married. His wife left him with the money and went overseas. And I abruptly halted him and said, Mr. Castellano, this is not let's make a deal. Take him away to prison.
One last point in the back of the room.
I'm just wondering if all the money that he collected from all the investors in Narrowsburg, does anybody ever know what he did with all that money, actually did? I mean, was it drugs, or did he have an expensive home somewhere, or whatever happened to all the money?
I don't know. I mean, he was a gambler for sure, but I don't know that explains where all the money went. And I think, you know, because he always said that she had stolen the money, and she always said that no, he had stolen all the money. you know, you could get, I mean, I think what's interesting about talking to people about a story like this that happened so far in the past and where everyone has different takes on it is, you know, I'd hear from one person sometimes like, oh, Richie never drank. He was an Alcoholics Anonymous, he was teetotaler. And then other people would say, oh, he was doing tons of cocaine the whole time he was in there. You know, so it's very hard to know the truth. But I just want to say thanks to everyone who's up here. It's like very surreal to be on this stage with all of you guys, and really couldn't be more fun for me. So thank you.
How about a hand for everybody?